Hello and welcome to an introduction to postgraduate study at Cambridge, presented by the Cambridge Admissions Office and Cambridge in America. Cambridge in America provides philanthropy and engagement resources for more than 19,000 University of Cambridge alumni across North America. Thank you for joining us today. A few housekeeping notes before we begin. Your microphone and camera will be turned off throughout. This session will have a Q&A following the presentation. You are welcome to submit Q&A questions throughout the talk using the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. Our speaker will attempt to address as many questions as possible, but time is limited. We thank you in advance for your understanding if your question is not answered today. This event is being recorded and will be uploaded onto the Cambridge in America YouTube channel. And now I would like to introduce today's speaker. Amy Roberson is the Regional Manager at the University of Cambridge and oversees recruitment activity for the Cambridge Admissions Office in North America and Australasia. Amy studied at the University of Birmingham in the UK and the University of Iowa in the US. She has been working in student recruitment at Cambridge since 2016, and much of her experience to date is advising North America-based students and supporters on Cambridge admissions. She is here today to discuss with students and supporters who are starting to explore their university postgraduate options and who want to learn more about the opportunities for studying at a world-leading university in the UK. We are delighted to have her here today. Please welcome Amy.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Cambridge in America, for that warm welcome. I'm here to talk to you today about graduate study at Cambridge. So I'll go ahead and share my screen with you. We've just got some slides that we'll run through today. And then, of course, I will try to get to as many questions that come through at the end. So do just use the Q&A function to submit those. I'd be happy to hear from you and also share my contact details at the end of the session. So we'll talk a little bit about the UK and kind of graduate study and what that looks like more generally to begin with. Then we'll think about why specifically Cambridge. We'll touch on what the application process itself looks like. Also talk about things like finances and everything related there. And then think about if you are interested in kind of continuing your research around graduate study options, what you can do now. So that's kind of an overview of today's session. We have roughly an hour, and yes, as I said, the first half will be kind of some slides to go through, and then we'll try and get to as many questions as possible. So what does postgraduate study in the UK look like then? Well, it takes the form of both master's level qualifications and PhD, which obviously follow the undergraduate bachelor's study level that most students will have undertaken before they're thinking about their postgraduate study options. The first kind of level of postgraduate study is master's level, and the type of master's and the kind of name that is associated with the course will vary by institution. At Cambridge, most of our master's programs are called MPhils, but you might see MAs or MScs depending on the institution and the faculty or department the program sits within at that institution. There are a variety of different types of masters available in the UK. So at Cambridge, we offer both taught and research-based masters. So taught will be kind of curriculum-based masters, whereby you'll have kind of more timetable classes and get kind of a set curriculum to follow within that year, or there are research-based masters whereby you are maybe following a certain research question in a particular area of study that is of a certain interest to you. So there are both available, and have a look at the kind of the ways that different programs are taught when you're considering your options. Masters are typically a year in duration, so very short courses and can be completed quite quickly. You can do these both full-time or as a part-time program, depending on your kind of other commitments. In terms of how they're graded, they're usually on kind of a pass, merit or distinction format, and they are a standalone qualification that is typically a requirement in the UK for doctoral study. So most PhD programs will require students to have done a master's level qualification in order to apply. It's not across the board that that's always the case, but that is the kind of most common way that masters and then feeding into PhD levels work. Obviously, PhDs are the highest kind of level of graduate study, and PhD programs typically have a very intensive research focus around a particular, potentially quite niche subject area that a student has been kind of engaging with for some of their studies already, and probably taking that kind of even further in terms of the research questions that they're setting. At a PhD level, the types of research that students will be undertaking really are contributing, especially at an institution like Cambridge, to the wider conversation around research in that particular field. And so we'll talk a little bit about kind of how Cambridge is contributing to kind of research and kind of academic narratives as we go through, but that is kind of the key purpose of a PhD. At a PhD level, you will be working very closely with supervisors typically, and again, we can explore exactly what that looks like at Cambridge. It's still quite a unique kind of offering the way that supervisors and supervisions work at the university. With your PhD, it may be that you are required to submit a research proposal as part of your PhD, having kind of a research question in mind that you're looking to follow, or it might be that you're applying to a project, a PhD program that already has kind of a predetermined research area that happens to fit very closely with your research interests. PhDs are longer than master's programs, but in the UK they are typically shorter than PhD programs in the US. This isn't because they're kind of less quality, it's really just because of the more focused elements of the kind of study that is being undertaken. So you can complete them in a shorter duration, but typically not skipping over any kind of detail, but actually just because you start kind of potentially from kind of further in, and also there are less kind of classroom-based elements or kind of teaching requirements that are associated with those as well. But the PhD in the UK is still kind of very highly regarded by global employers. It's possible to do kind of a 1+3, so applying to a master's and then kind of rolling on with potentially a kind of sub-application within a PhD program. And at a doctoral level, there is plenty of funding available, which is really kind of a positive kind of area of funding that is available in the UK, and we'll talk in more depth about what kind of funding opportunities look like at Cambridge as we go through. That's just some top level information, but now we'll think about why Cambridge specifically. Within the university, there are kind of some key areas that we want to draw on. So Cambridge is world renowned for its academic excellence and expertise. We are currently ranked second in the world in the 2023 QS World Rankings, just behind MIT. So we are globally recognized for our academic excellence. And so that is really at the center of why many of our students are considering Cambridge and considering coming to a real epicenter of academic excellence, research, innovation, also pairing alongside the kind of history of the university as well. We'll talk about the range of courses that we have on offer. Cambridge does have hundreds of courses available that span a really wide and often some quite niche areas, which often means that students are able to find a very specific area of research that matches their interests. We'll talk about graduate prospects and how the university is able to kind of facilitate those prospects. We'll also touch on the college system. So many of you will know that Cambridge is a collegiate structure, and this means that at a even at a graduate study level, and the colleges have a really big impact on how Cambridge is experienced by our postgraduate community and the type of experience that graduate students get that's maybe a little bit different to other UK or US universities, because of this kind of collegiate structure that really facilitates some nice cross-academic relationships. Then also we'll touch on student life and what that means at a postgraduate level. So lots to unpick. As we've touched on, really at the centre of Cambridge's reputation is our academic excellence, and this is really reflecting the cutting edge research that is going on at our departments, both by university and college staff and students, and that has been going on and is still continues to go on today. Cambridge is an intellectually challenging environment. We're a rigorous institution, but many of our students kind of thrive off that academic excellence. And the fact that we have this draw means that we are a very diverse and international graduate community. So about 50% of our postgraduate students are from an international background, which means we really are drawing the kind of best minds from across the world and really encouraging that the different viewpoints and the kind of different discussions and perspectives that a kind of global student cohort brings to the table. So a really fantastic opportunity at Cambridge to immerse yourself in a really global community of scholars. Given the standing of the university, as we've touched on already, at the centre of our kind of academic excellence, alongside our students, are our staff members. And so as a graduate student, you will be working very closely with academics, professors who are often nationally or even internationally renowned in their particular field, and really contributing to the cutting edge research and the conversation, the narrative at the forefront of kind of global research that is happening. We have also kind of world-class facilities to support this as well. So that is kind of, when we're talking about Cambridge, really at the heart of the graduate student experience is that academic excellence and the range of courses that we have on offer. So we do have over 300 courses at Cambridge that span about 21 different types of qualification, as I've said, including kind of taught and research-based masters and PhD programs. Usually this means that there is almost certainly an area where you're able to specialize according to your interests, and so often an area to kind of combine various disciplines and really kind of get to the core of your interests in a way that align very well. We have on our postgraduate study website a course directory, which means that you can search and filter using keywords about the types of courses that we have available. So I would really encourage anyone who is interested in kind of seeing the variety of courses that are available, using that as a starting point to kind of narrow down the selection of courses that you might be interested in. And there are new courses that are being introduced all the time at the university, including some really interesting ones. For example, the School of the Physical Sciences have got some kind of data intensive science programs that are fairly new. I know the School of Clinical Medicine is kind of has some new courses in the pipeline. So there's lots of kind of new courses as well as the ones that are more established as well. So lots to be kind of engaging with in terms of the finding out more about the courses and how they might suit your interests. We touched on your kind of close contact with supervisors at Cambridge. And this is kind of a feature of any graduate level education. But at Cambridge, the supervision teaching that is so central to the undergraduate experience, so the one-on-one contact time, the one to small group contact time, continues into the graduate level study. And this means that whilst maybe not as regular as supervisions at an undergraduate study level, so maybe not weekly or fortnightly, there is still a minimum of supervision, minimum number of supervision hours that graduate students are required to fulfill. And so that means that graduate students are really still getting that really unique teaching that's available at the university, and that kind of one-on-one or one to small group discussion and feedback is a really kind of valued way of teaching at the university, and yet it is still feeding into the way that many of our courses are taught. So a little bit about graduate prospects. I think the main kind of takeaway is that ultimately Cambridge graduates are highly sought after, irrespective of degree discipline, and this still applies even if they've only spent a year with us doing potentially a one-year master's. Even if their time here is short, there is a kind of plethora of support and guidance available to graduate students when encouraging them to think about how the skills they're gaining on our courses are transferable into potential career pathways, and really the careers service at the university is central to both supporting applicants in their kind of potential search for employment or in their decision about continuing on to further study. So the career service is a really fantastic resource that is available to all students for a lifetime membership. So again, even if you're only at Cambridge for a shorter amount of time as a graduate student, you will still have access to that down the line if you do decide to pull back on that support later if you're making a career change or just want some general advice. We have dedicated advisors for postgraduate students, so very tailored advice, including things like one-to-one consultations, but also the big careers events that the career service will put on, whereby they are connecting graduate students with potential employers through kind of recruitment fairs and skills workshops. Cambridge also has one of the widest reaching global alumni networks, and the careers service kind of plays a key role in connecting students with those groups and things like that as well. So the career service is just one of the very extensive support facilities we have at the university. We have an accessibility and disability resource centre, we have our students union. So the career service is just one of the university-wide support services that are really kind of available to students to use as much or as little as they want, but is a really kind of useful and worthwhile resource that is available to support our students. As I've touched on already, Cambridge is a collegiate university, which means that as well as being a member of a department or a faculty, a student at Cambridge is also a member of a college. And this applies at an undergraduate and a postgraduate level. We have 31 colleges that have that give students college membership. And as I touched on already, the college system is a really unique part of the university and a really unique part of the graduate experience in general. As I said, it's in a lot of universities, when you're a graduate student, you might spend a lot of your time within your department, within your faculty, really there being the only kind of people that you're engaging with, or that being kind of the majority of where your experience at university is based. At Cambridge, students have the option to engage in college life as much again or as little as they want, but it does really offer another unique element of experience in terms of the academic, but also the kind of social side of university as well. So Essentially, at a postgraduate level, colleges are a community of scholars who are living, socializing, and working together. So if you go for dinner in your college, or if you go to a club or society based in your college, you'll be meeting and mixing with students at a graduate level and sometimes an undergraduate level as well, from across the academic disciplines. So this is really facilitating some really interesting conversations, and you're really getting to mix with people who you might not meet in kind of everyday life within your department, but actually they're able to enrich your academic experience and your general kind of understanding and perspective on the world, essentially. The colleges are also a real epicenter of support and guidance for our students. So colleges will all have postgraduate tutors who are there to support students, and there will also be kind of some peer networks of support. So colleges all have a kind of graduate common room and areas that are kind of therefore peer network support as well. So lots of support through the colleges, and colleges can provide accommodation. So graduate students might choose to live in college accommodation in kind of dorm type style facilities, or they might choose to live in specific postgraduate assigned accommodation somewhere within the city that's owned by the college, or it might be that you choose to privately rent, in which case we have our accommodation service that can kind of help you through that process. But there is the opportunity for accommodation in many of the colleges for postgraduate students if they choose that option. And so, yeah, the colleges are a really kind of nice addition to the kind of academic experience within the department at a graduate level, and can be something that really kind of enhances a graduate student's experience of the university. So feeding into this, I mentioned that colleges might have kind of clubs and societies that go on within their mini kind of campuses. Well, the university as well will have university level clubs and societies. So within these kind of university and college level clubs and societies, we have about 500 overall. So really a lot to get involved with, and many of our students are very obviously academically engaged, but also that means they're very switched on and engaged in kind of their extracurriculars once they get to university as well. So lots of things to engage with, things like sport, music, drama at every level. So kind of quite casually if you're just doing something for fun, or if you want to, for example, represent the university at a particular sport that you do competitively, there's plenty of opportunities for that as well. Cambridge is also a fantastic place to be a graduate student. So beyond the university, which is obviously has a lot going on, the city of Cambridge itself has plenty of pubs and restaurants and cafes. So lots to kind of try, immerse yourself in kind of British culture and the food scene. And many students will kind of take a while to suss out their favorite spots. I know we have some blogs on our Uni Buddy pages where a student writes about their favorite spots to study and get coffee. So do check out those if you're interested, but just things like that students often settle in very quickly and find their favorite spots, because Cambridge does have a kind of nice kind of college town feel. So it's a medium-sized city, and so that does mean that everything becomes very familiar very quickly. Alongside the kind of city side of things, there are also lots of green spaces. So we have many parks throughout the city. We have the River that's running through the city, so that's lots of green spaces as well. So a nice combination of kind of city and countryside. Cambridge is also host to a number of events and things each year. So we have many festivals, so not just music festivals, but we have the Cambridge Science Festival. So home to lots of exciting things that are open to university students, but also to the public. And if there's not enough going on for you in Cambridge, there is also London is in very close proximity, so it's only 50 minutes on the train to London, where obviously you can explore kind of the UK and what we have to offer further afield as well. So as I said, lots going on. Unfortunately, I don't have a student here to talk more about this today. So you have just had to listen to me talking about student life, but there is tons of ways to kind of hear a little bit more and learn a little bit more about student life directly from students. So for example, as I said, we have our UniBuddy blogs, which our postgraduate students have written some really kind of interesting subject areas, so I would recommend having a read of those. They are very quick but also really insightful if you're like interested in hearing a little bit more about the kind of different areas of Cambridge that's not just kind of the student or not just the kind of academic focus, the kind of things that students get up to in their spare time and things like that. So that's kind of a recap of Cambridge and what we have to offer. Now we'll just think about the kind of practicalities, so things like the entry requirements and also the financial side of things. So in terms of our entry requirements, we are very transparent about our entry requirements, and we'll typically have kind of specific entry requirements that we're asking for, but these will vary by course, and so you do need to just visit the course directory and the course pages that will outline all of this information for you very clearly. But we do have some kind of general advice around what we're looking for in our students. So we are looking for strong academic merit, so kind of academic achievement in kind of prior qualifications, so probably your undergraduate studies. And so we are looking for students with that kind of strong academic ability and potential. At a postgraduate level, even more so than an undergraduate level, where it is still very important, we are looking for your suitability for the course, and particularly your fit for the Cambridge department that you are applying to in particular, because there might be a very kind of specific research interest that aligns very well with your own interests, and that's what we're talking about when we're talking about suitability for the course. It's not just, oh, this is my kind of general interest. It's like, do my kind of specific interests really align with the type of research that's going on within the department? And you will be able to see on department websites the type of research that's being undertaken. There will be kind of lists of staff members and their different specialisms and things, so it is easy to find out what is going on within the department and whether that then feels like a good fit for you and your interests. It is really important that alongside having these interests that are very similar, that you fulfill the minimum entry requirements, and we'll look at those on the next slide. Also, we will take into consideration things like the availability of supervisors. So does the department have someone who is currently accepting students who they're able to guide through the kind of master's or the PhD program, and do they have space on the course? So some courses will will review applications on kind of a rolling basis, and some will review on a gathered field, but obviously that means that some departments might start to make offers earlier on, and if your application comes in later, then they're kind of taking into consideration whether there's space on the course, and we'll touch on kind of the timeline for things as we go through a little bit more. So in terms of our minimum academic requirements, there are two minimum academic requirements. So we have kind of the main university minimum requirement, which is essentially the equivalent of a 3.5 or 4.3 GPA. That will be kind of the minimum for many of our courses, although some of our courses will ask for the equivalent of a first class honours degree. That's according to kind of the UK marking system, but that equates to more like a 3.7 or a 4.6 GPA. So that is kind of the equivalent. You can see these entry requirements on our International Equivalencies webpage, on our postgraduate study website, and then you can cross-reference them with the course requirements that are listed on the course pages. So we are very transparent about our grade requirements, and this is kind of a useful guide to those. So in terms of the cost of living and studying, essentially the costs of studying at the University of Cambridge can be broken down into two areas. So we have the university composition fee, which is essentially your tuition, and then also your maintenance, so the kind of estimated living costs. And you can calculate these at the link below. So on the finance pages of our website and on the course pages, there will typically be a kind of finance tab where you can see the kind of estimated costs. And if you are an overseas student coming from the US or another country, you can just toggle on the overseas cap, because the fees for international versus home students are slightly different. So just make sure you have that toggle on in order to see kind of the true estimation of your costs associated. As I said, we do have many funding opportunities at Cambridge. I think we allocate about £100 million worth of kind of scholarships and awards each year. This is the majority of this funding goes towards PhD students, so funding opportunities are fewer and further between at master's levels. It's much more common for students to self-fund their masters. In the UK, it is fairly affordable to fund a one-year master's program, but for those longer PhD programs, there are typically lots of awards that will offer either full or partial funding, and it is fine at a postgraduate level to combine funding sources, so you can have kind of funding from a few different areas to make up the kind of full cost of your tuition and living. The most important thing is to research early about the different things that are available, and we have a student funding search on our website that is useful. You can kind of put in your study levels, where you're from, and it will drag up a lot of the funding competitions that you are eligible for. It's really important to apply early for funding. So there are various deadlines for our programs. But if you want to be considered for funding opportunities, these are typically earlier on in the year. And so that's just something worth bearing in mind if you are not going to be self-funded, making sure you apply by the relevant funding deadline. Gates Cambridge is a very kind of well-known funding opportunity, and they have a specific US round for their students, but there are other US specific scholarships available, including kind of Churchill, Marshall, Fulbright. Obviously these aren't the only ones available, but these are kind of some of the well-known ones. In the UK and at Cambridge, offers for funding typically come separate from offers of admission. So this is maybe quite different to US universities that often package the funding with the offer of admission. In the UK, you might get an offer of admission, and then funding opportunities are usually you're usually notified later on, usually in the spring, so kind of March, April time is when the majority of funding offers go, but they can go as late as kind of the summer, July time. So it's just important to be aware that the timeline can vary, and just applying and starting the kind of process early is the kind of key takeaway of this section, I guess. So just we'll just whiz through the kind of various steps of the application process, and then we can close out with questions. So we won't go into too much detail, but the first step of any postgraduate kind of journey is to choose your course. As I said, we have a very thorough course directory where you can filter and sort, and these will present course details, entry requirements, links to department websites. So do utilize that in your search for your course. It's really important to check funding deadlines. So as I said, there are typically two funding deadlines, a course deadline and a funding deadline. It's really important that you apply by the earlier funding deadline if you want to be considered for centrally coordinated funding through the graduate funding competition, which is the way that the majority of funding is kind of allocated through Cambridge, and just applying as early as possible is recommended. You apply through the online application portal. So basically, when you're on any course page on our website, there will be a little black apply now button in the top right hand corner, and that will basically allow you to begin an application and take you to the applicant portal, whereby you can then kind of follow the journey of your application through. We do require 2 academic references in most cases, so that's something to kind of be aware of and get kind of permission from your referees before applying. These are, as I said, typically academic references. There are a few kind of options where if you've been out of formal education for a while, there might be a professional reference that can be in place, but there's a useful flow chart on our website to identify exactly what your references might look like. All postgraduates at Cambridge, as I said, get college membership, and applicants can indicate 2 college preferences within the application. Or you can make an open application whereby you're basically saying, I'd be happy at any college. College membership for these first 2 preferences isn't guaranteed, but I think we make around 65% of students get one of their college choices. So obviously, yeah, no guarantee, but that's kind of the stats of that. And if you are made an offer by the department, the academic decision and the department decision is kind of the first decision. If you are made an offer of admission, then you're automatically guaranteed college membership. So your offer of admission from the department isn't contingent on your college accepting that. They must accept you if you have been offered a department place already. Then obviously, once you've gathered all of the documentation required, so the references, any kind of statement of purpose or research proposal, or any your CV, your resume, then you're ready to submit your application through the application portal. And it's really important to just save a copy of that if you do want that for reference. The department or the funding body might ask you to invite you for an interview. These are typically kind of telephone or kind of virtual interviews, but yes, they kind of might take place. And then you can track your progress of your application through the applicant portal once you've submitted it. It's really important that you check your applicant portal regularly. It's the main way that we kind of communicate with our students, and allow and kind of notify them of our decisions and things like that. So all of this and more is available on our website. So do visit that if you're wanting to know a little bit more about the specifics of how you can apply directly. And then just thinking about if you are genuinely thinking about postgraduate study at Cambridge, what can you do now? Well, at whatever point in the journey you're at, doing your research is really key. Again, identifying the right course, the right institution for you, and of course, familiarizing yourself with the application process and requirements for your course. You're kind of halfway there as you've attended this today, but there'll be lots more information that you can gain from the university web pages. So do use those to familiarize yourself with kind of the specific course detail of the program you're applying to. There are lots of events and resources that you can engage with to learn more or to ask specific questions. So do use our website to kind of look out for those. And it's not always a requirement that you identify a potential supervisor, but if it's indicated on your course page that you should identify a potential supervisor ahead of an application, then you can start that process, the process of kind of reaching out by email, having those conversations around why you might make a good kind of supervisee, and yeah, there's kind of that process that you can start engaging with as well. Academics are very busy and they can take a while to respond, so starting that ahead of time is also not going to hurt as well. So opportunities to find out more. Obviously, I've said a number of times today, our website is the best place to start. There are typically contact details for departments that you can reach out to with any kind of course inquiries. There's also our postgraduate admissions office who are there to help with any kind of application general queries. We have our postgraduate open days, which usually take place in November, so those will be happening kind of much later in the year. But we also have events that we attend in country and in Cambridge that are good opportunities to speak to a representative, hear more, and get your questions answered. So do look out for those as well. And of course, if you want to kind of get more regular updates, you can sign up to our mailing list. You can scan that QR code there, or you can go to our website and sign up to our mailing list there. That you'll get kind of updates and kind of information on kind of the latest events or the latest kind of useful tidbits for postgraduate life at Cambridge. That's pretty much it from me. So thank you so much for listening, and I hope you found that useful. Of course, if you have questions, you can follow up with me specifically, but if you do have questions that you want answering in this session, then please do send those through. We have about 20 minutes left of the session, so I'll answer any that come through, and then if there aren't any more, then we can either wrap up early or I can kind of hang around for questions. And we have got 2 that have come through, so I'll start with those. Okay, this is a good question. What if we are interested in a postgraduate course that is quite different from our current undergraduate course? For example, I'm doing environmental policy, but I'm interested in environmental policy, but I'm currently doing a history degree. That is a really good question, and there's a few answers really. So for some courses, they won't require you to have much prior knowledge of a specific area. They will kind of get you up to speed on the specific course, and it is designed for students who are entering from a variety of backgrounds. There are some courses that might require that within your undergraduate degree you've taken a related module or a related course at university and are a little bit more prescriptive around what your kind of prior knowledge looks like. So I would say have a look at the course website around the prerequisites for admission. The prerequisites are much more common in kind of STEM-based, so kind of science and maths-based programs, and are often a little bit more flexible on the kind of more arts and humanities or social science courses. So yes, I'd say have a look at the course requirements. If on the course pages they aren't prescriptive about what you've taken, then that will typically mean that you can come at the course from any background. So hopefully that helps. A question from Catherine: I'm a dual citizen. Would I count as a home student or an international student coming in terms of funding? So funding is basically really individual, and I can't say exactly exactly what your funding would look like at a postgraduate level. Essentially, it is based on a variety of different factors. And so I would say contacting our postgraduate admissions office with any specific questions. They might be able to offer a guide around whether you'd qualify as a home or international student. But if you have dual citizenship, have been living outside of the UK for a number of years, it may be that you tip into the international, but it is contingent on a number of different factors that takes into consideration a lot more than just kind of where you're living. So I would say have a look on our website, but probably contact the postgraduate admissions office for a little bit more guidance, even though they probably won't be able to give super specific guidance until after the point of offer. So yeah, unfortunately, when it comes to funding, it's a little bit of a grey area and we can't give too much kind of clarity, but they might be able to offer a little bit more insight into that. Thank you for your question. Oh, Logan is asking, what is one thing you would change about Cambridge? I think that's probably a question that will, an answer that will vary depending on who you're talking to. Everyone's experience of Cambridge is obviously different. That's a question I've worked at the university for a long time. I've actually never been asked that. So that's given me some food for thought. Yeah, I don't know what my answer would be off the top of my head, but I'm happy to ponder and maybe come back to you if we have time at the end. And Logan, if you want to follow up with me by email, that's also fine as well. Thank you for that question. It's very thought-provoking for a Thursday evening. If you already have a question from Shan, if you already have an MPhil from Cambridge, could you potentially do a PhD in 2 years? What are other things to keep in mind as a Cambridge graduate? So even a master's is typically a prerequisite for most of the Cambridge courses, and so most kind of courses that wouldn't expedite you necessarily, because most students would be required to have the 1-year masters and still complete within the kind of 3 to 4 year standard. So I would say that's probably a question for the department as to whether there's any flexibility around that. But I would imagine that because most PhDs do require the MPhil anyway, it's probably kind of the standard length, and there wouldn't be too much kind of fast forwarding through that course. What are the other things to keep in mind as a Cambridge graduate? I think, again, we've kind of touched on a lot of it already, but kind of utilising the alumni network. Many of you are maybe familiar with the kind of networks that exist in North America, and kind of really kind of tapping into those as a Cambridge graduate can be kind of a key way to kind of learn from others, and yeah, potentially gain kind of mentor relationships and things like that. So hopefully that's answered both of your questions. Thanks, Shan. Anna says, is it possible to apply and after being accepted into a postgrad program, defer the acceptance? In other words, not start right away. This really is dependent by course. So there might be some courses that allow you to defer, but many of our courses have multiple starting dates throughout the year. We often work, some courses have up to 3 starting dates throughout the year. So what would be most common is that they would probably just advise you to apply for the start date that suits you, rather than kind of put it on hold, because obviously the amount of offers that they give is dependent on the amount of spaces. So yeah, I would say you can always contact the department, but they will probably advise you, rather than deferring, to just identify that kind of intake that you're looking, that is most suitable, and then kind of encourage you to apply for that. But it's not unheard of. It's just not super common. Another question from Logan: how does the student visas work for students coming from the US? So if a student gets an offer of admission, either at undergraduate or postgraduate level, the university essentially becomes their sponsor for any visas that are required. And we have an international students office who help and assist through the visa process. The postgraduate admissions office essentially administers you something called a CAS, which is kind of like a visa invitation letter, and so that works. How much access do you have to the professors when you need help? Hopefully, with the kind of description of the supervision systems, it's kind of emphasized that students at Cambridge have a lot of access to professors. So both within the department, where there'll likely be an allocated supervisor, but also through someone like a postgraduate tutor within the colleges. There are multiple members of staff who are often there to oversee a student's academic progress, and who are really there to look out for students, offer that bit more support if they need it. And so yeah, Cambridge is really a very supportive environment that ensures that students kind of don't fall through the cracks, and yeah, lots of support if they need it. A question from Joshua: do you have general advice for applicants with families, i.e. young children? Yes, so we do have some dedicated web pages on our website that is information for families. We do have some services that are there to offer you support through if you are bringing kind of dependents with you to Cambridge. We do have some kind of specific accommodation for students with families. So it is something that is like that does happen, and we are kind of have the framework to be able to support you through that. So yeah, using the web pages as a starting point, and then kind of getting in contact with anyone from there with more for more kind of guidance and info. Hopefully that is a helpful starting point. What sets a master's application apart? I think being as specific as possible. So obviously you might be applying to a number of different institutions, but really doing your research around what is involved in the course, what's happening within the department, and really using that to inform your application, and using that to really say why you are wanting to study specifically at Cambridge. It's the same with if you're reaching out to potential supervisors, rather than just like a generic email like, oh, I'm really interested in your research, can I talk to you further? Make it very specific, highlight a particular paper of theirs that you've read, and why you found that specifically interesting, and just using something to kind of set you apart that attracts attention and also demonstrates that you've done your research, I think is some of the key tips. But on like our postgraduate open days and things, we do have sessions on like how to write a good research proposal or how to write a good application. So there are things throughout the year that are kind of help to inform that as well. A question from Anna: what happens if you apply to Cambridge as an American citizen, but you have dual nationality and also have UK citizenship, but have never resided in the UK? I'm assuming you don't need a student visa. Yes, so if you hold a British passport, then I mean, always follow the kind of Home Office guidance. But yes, there will probably be less requirements for visas as if you're entering the UK on your other passports. So yeah, we have an international students office who would provide that kind of more dedicated information, and you can until then kind of use the Home Office website as your kind of main resource. Amazing. That is all of the questions. Amazing that we could get through them. If anyone has any final questions, I will give people a minute to send through. Otherwise, we're fine to wrap up early, I think. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining. If you do have questions, just drop me an email, and we're back and forth North America quite a bit, and we'll hopefully be in New York in the spring if you do want to come along for a chat or discuss kind of what you've heard today a little bit further as well. So yeah, it doesn't look like any other questions have come through, so I'll hand back over to Cambridge in America to close us out. Thanks everyone.